Chapter 16. If we can't beat 'em, then we might as well buy 'em. Mike, we need to talk about the acquisition strategy. Can you wait about an hour? I'm only on my first cup of coffee. David stopped typing in the chat. Clearly he wasn't amused by my early morning sense of humor. Maybe it was the lack of humor that displeased him. I replied back, "Now is fine. Where should we start?" "Let's square the circle. What's the plan? Talk to me." That's really the $64,000 question, isn't it? The plan is to sell more Flushy. The plan is to go deep and to go wide. We want to lift and shift. At the same time, we don't want to boil the ocean. Yeah, that all sounded smart. I mean, smart enough to pass the smell test. I like it. Tell me more. See, David, it's all about synergies, really. Synergies and scalability that leverage our omni-channel approach. Yes, I like it. I like it a lot. Thanks. So, what barriers are getting in your way? None that I know of. Well, go out and do that. Let me know how it goes. We have high expectations for you. Will do, boss. Over and out. Thinking it over, the strategy wasn't all bad. We wanted to attack the castle from all sides. We wanted to acquire clients from 3 revenue streams. We wanted to acquire clients through marketing, through acquiring brokerages, and acquiring small insurance carriers. The ironic part is, if a carrier turned down our initial offer, after we've stolen enough clients, we could then come back with a much worse offer that they would have to accept. I mean, it was all really quite genius. Monday was already off to a fast start. After wrapping up that quick strategy convo with David, I decided to clear out my inbox. To my surprise, I had over 100 unanswered emails waiting for me. All that by the time I got to the office. Not bad. Apparently, the email campaign we sent out was pretty successful. We had RFPs from all size firms, 100-man firms to 1-man firms. Really, a request for proposal is just an excuse for business people to mock up presentations. One of my peons had put my work email address as the automated reply. Big mistake. What a genius. Who in the world thought it was a good idea to put my contact info on this email? I shouted across the office floor. A hand slowly raised above the rows of cubicles. I pointed them out and shouted at the top of my lungs, "You! Get over here!" If there's one thing I've learned from being in corporate America, it was to never give your contact information directly to the customer. Otherwise, the customer is going to be bothering you every 5 minutes for this, that, and the other thing. The employee walked over to my office. I realized I hadn't even bothered to learn anyone's name yet. The one thing I had learned is that all good members of the senior leadership team have to be able to make examples out of their employees. "What's your name?" "Jeff Stolovsky." "Jeff, did you put my contact info on this email?" "I did." "Can I ask why you did that?" "Well, I figured that way in case they have questions about the program." "You don't figure, Jeff. No one is paying you to figure. We're paying you to execute. I do the figuring around here. If you don't like that, I suggest you go refresh your resume." Jeff's face went pale and he froze up. I couldn't blame him. I wasn't being my normal self. Maybe I was projecting my own nervousness onto Jeff. I shifted my tone down and asked, "Do you get what I'm laying down? I don't have the appropriate bandwidth to be dealing with customers." "I do." "I don't have time to sit here and comb through emails, not to mention all of the follow-up emails. I'm the closer. By the time it gets to me, I need it teed up and ready to close." I was getting used to this whole manager thing. The power was addictive, the ability to make people bend to my will. It was exhilarating. It was like a drug. Upon inspection of the emails, I found that most of them were obvious attempts at trolling. One of the return email addresses read muhbuth@email.com. muhbutt@email.com? Apparently the email campaign wasn't as successful as I initially assumed. However, one of the emails did catch my eye. It was from Daily Insurance Group. No, that can't be right. My phone started ringing. It was the front desk. I was hesitant about picking it up. The receptionist said, "Sir, a John Daly with Daily Insurance Group is here to see you." "Don't let him up. I'll come down to greet him in the lobby," I said, and quickly hung up. "Gilroy, do me a favor and hold all my calls. I've got a meeting down in the lobby with a potential broker." I made my way down to the lobby, and standing next to the receptionist was John Daly. John was smiling ear to ear and chatting up the receptionist. The most prudent course of action was to speak first. That way I didn't give him a chance to make a scene. If I could only get rid of him and make this all disappear. "Can I help you, sir?" "That depends. You sent me an email about a potential business opportunity." I took a deep breath and whispered, "What do you want, John?" "I want to sell more Flushy, as you so eloquently put it in the email." I grabbed John's arm and whisked him to a remote part of the lobby for more privacy. I subtly scanned the room to see if there were any microphones present. It looked like the coast was clear and we could speak in a modicum of privacy. I whispered to John, "Is this your idea of discreet? Do you know how much trouble I can get into if they found out I was talking to you?" "Mike, you're wearing a $10,000 wristwatch. You didn't strike me as a person who liked to keep a low profile." The conversation went silent for a second. As an act of insecurity, I plunged my hand in my pocket to hide my watch. Two groups of people entered the lobby and started slowly walking over towards us. Not in an intentional way, but slowly navigated over to us. I noticed it, but didn't think it was anything to worry about. I moved further over to some dead space in the corner of the lobby. John made sure to pursue me as inconspicuously as possible. "Why are you here?" "I'm here to follow up on our last conversation. Did you give it a second thought?" "This isn't the place. We can't talk here." "Well, where can we go to talk? How's the 40th floor sound? I hear some interesting stuff goes on up there." "Not here. Not now." "If not here, then where? If not now, then when?" "I'll call you." John laughed and shot me a smile. He didn't flinch an inch. Large droplets of sweat began to roll down my forehead. I looked around, and one of the random people in the lobby was staring at me. I stared back, and they pretended to look at their phone for a quick distraction. John scoffed at my attempt to brush him off. He wasn't easily dissuaded by my effort. "Mike, as always, it was lovely speaking with you. Hopefully it won't be the last time we talk. Or the last time you can talk. That's the thing about a tontine, Mike. People walk around like there is some permanence to it all. Let me tell you, there sure isn't." I waved John off and headed back to the elevator. As I turned away, I thought about that term. Tontine, I'd been meaning to look it up. I just didn't have time. I turned back to John for a second and whispered, "Tontine, you mentioned that last time. Why do you keep bringing it up?" John smiled and said, "Mike, you have problems now. Do you want trouble too?" John stepped forward and closed the gap between us. He whispered out of the side of his mouth, "It's this simple, Mike. A tontine is basically a group annuity." "Yeah? What's so special about it?" "Basically, a bunch of people pool money together and invest it. As each member of the tontine dies, the remaining shares split among the surviving members. The last person to live collects all the money." "Pfft! And what? Man, I can't be having you waste my time like this." "The Romans used to have an old saying. It's one I think you should learn. It's cui bono." "Cui bono?" It basically means who benefits. Flushy has changed quite a bit in a short amount of time. People tend to be perfectly healthy one day and perfectly dead the next. But who benefits? Why don't you cut the bull? What do you want from me? You're asking all the wrong questions, Mike. I just sell insurance. Simply that. I sell insurance. Look, drop the act. What do you want? John handed me a manila file folder that was about 2 inches thick. Why don't you start by looking over this insurance proposal I put together for you? I spent quite a bit of time working on this for you. I hope we can come to terms on this proposal, for your sake. I snatched the folder out of his hand and shoved it in my armpit. John smiled, put his aviators on, and headed towards the exit. If I never saw that guy again, I could consider that a good life. On my way back up to the office, I was oddly escorted by a new face. A stout, very tan gentleman accompanied me on the elevator. Apparently, where this guy came from, they didn't believe in necks, or dieting for that matter. Before I knew it, he started drumming up small talk. We had several more floors to go, so I decided to chat. "What you got there?" he said and pointed to my folder. "Oh, this? It's just market research on some of our competition." "Ah, is that why it's covered in sweat?" Chalk that up to poor genetics. Just as the conversation was about to get interesting, we arrived at my floor. "Oh, look at that! Saved by the bell. Well, this is my floor. Gotta go. Nice knowing you." I leaped out of the elevator like a skydiver jumping out of an airplane for the first time. I had to bury this folder away or shred it. I scurried back to my office, opened my locked desk drawer, and slammed the folder into it. Gilroy knocked on my door and inquired, "Everything okay, boss?" "Oh, yeah, just great. Couldn't be better," I replied sarcastically. "I took the liberty of scheduling some meetings for you. I hope you don't mind." "Mind? No, of course not. Wait, meetings? With who?" "Meetings with agency owners who responded to the email blast." Gilroy was staring at that manila file folder, almost as if she was taking a mental note. I slammed the drawer shut, and she snapped back into reality. Maybe she was just spacing out, or maybe my paranoia was beginning to magnify the longer I kept this folder. Gilroy started scribbling something down on a napkin she grabbed off my desk. As she was writing on the napkin, she kind of palmed it in her hand and walked over to my door jamb. "Boss, what you got there?" It's just some competitive intelligence. Hush-hush kind of material." "Competitive intel?" "It's a proposal from another insurance carrier, among some marketing materials." "Uh-huh. Well, your first meeting should be here in about an hour or so. Plenty of time to look over that competitive intel." Gilroy crumpled up that napkin she was writing on and miserably attempted to toss it in my trash can. "Oh, darn, I missed. Would you mind, Mike?" I waved her off and went over to pick up the napkin. As I bent down to pick it up, I couldn't help but wonder what she wrote down. I looked to my left, and she was gone. The coast was clear, so I started unraveling the napkin. Gilroy didn't have some big mystery about her. She left something inconspicuous enough to be disregarded, but meant for my eyes only and easy enough to decipher. The napkin simply read, "Don't forget to look up." Gilroy was pretty sneaky. Here I thought she might have been taking notes on me, but in reality she was trying to look out for me. I scrunched the napkin back up and tossed it in the trash can. For the next hour or so, I sat at my desk, flushing out my options and rubbing my hands together. Before I knew it, my phone started ringing. Ring, ring, ring. I guess it was time to start closing some deals. I quickly yelled across the office for help. "Gilroy, who am I meeting with right now?" Ring, ring. "Robert Farherter from the Farherter Insurance Agency." I shot a quick thumbs up her way and answered the line. "Good afternoon. This is Mike Allen with—" Just as I finished answering the phone, an interminable thundering sound rang across the other line. What I could only surmise was someone placing the inward palms of their hands across their lips and imitating the all-too-familiar sound of flatulence. I held the phone away from my ear because what followed next was a bellowing of laughter. I took it they were not interested in my proposal. The phone went silent and I gingerly placed it back on my desk. "Gilroy, would you mind coming in here for a second?" "Sure thing, boss." Gilroy trotted into my office. "Can I ask you something?" "What's up, boss?" "How are you screening these people?" "Well, I'm not." "Ah, that makes sense." Gilroy tilted her head in confusion. "What happened with that last appointment?" "Well, when I picked up the phone, he made a loud farting sound." "What?" "But wait, there's more." That was followed by a chorus of laughter from what I can assume were all the people at his brokerage. "Oh. Yeah, Robert Farherter. I should have guessed based on the name." "I'm sorry." "Try, if it's not too much trouble, to pre-screen some of these people for me." "I'm on it, boss." "That's all. Thanks." Gilroy trudged back to her desk and went back to work. To be honest, I didn't have a good grasp of what she worked on all day. I mean, she seemed to stay busy enough. For the next 3 hours, I fielded more legitimate inquiries and actually was able to sign up some agencies to join the Flushy team. The marketplace was rife with opportunity for fledgling insurance agencies willing to accept offers. By and large, most people who are offered to sell out will sell out. When push comes to shove, some people might resist. But by and large, if you dangle money in front of someone, they'll take it. That's just human nature. I decided to take a break around 7 o'clock. For some reason, that just felt like a good break time for me. I opened my desk drawer and delicately pulled out the file folder. The only safe place to look at this thing was in the confines of the restroom. Luckily, Flushy sprang for a private restroom on this floor. I tucked the folder into my armpit and got up from my desk. I did one of those scouting out the room stretches. After a quick scan of the room, it looked like the floor had cleared out. So I headed over to the restroom for some solitude. I hid away in one of the stalls and carefully examined the folder. The file folder itself seemed rather harmless. As I began to pull back the kimono, I found nothing. The first 10 pages of the proposal were completely blank. As I peeled back the onion, there was a note inside. The note simply read, "Have you met Todd Dupree?" It's funny. How in the world have I not met with him yet? I put my phone back in my pocket and perused the rest of the file folder. This time I inspected the folder in a more laborious fashion. There was an article in the folder about the galvanizing leadership of Dupree that counterbalanced and contrasted the egomaniacal style of co-founder David Berrigan. The more I read, the more it raised my level of concern. Where was this going? Article after article, it was all the same. It seems that David wasn't the mastermind of Flushy. He was just along for the ride that Dupree created. The articles ceased abruptly in the folder and transitioned to black and white photos. How is it that I haven't heard from this guy? How is it that nobody talks to him? I was left with more questions than answers. The last page of the folder had a note attached to it. The note read, "You've got the background. Now focus the lens and find the foreground." To be safe, I flushed the note down the toilet and shoved the folder into the tank of the toilet so no one would ever find it. It would seem I had some sleuthing to do,